Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, giving the pre-Flashpoint fix to Tinian's Detective Comics. Last time, Intelligence saw a religious robot with a different kind of connection to Jean-Paul Valley. The underground utopia didn't get that much attention, but Stephanie Brown was still less stupid this time. And Bat Tim still tried to kill Batwoman, but the reasons he didn't say anything about why are a little better explained. Not perfect, but better than nothing if you ask me.
I never learned my alphabet from A to Z.
Detective Comics Annual, The Curse of Clayface.
No, Selma, this is lying. That was a well-plotted piece of non-claptrap that never made me want to retch.
This would be a series of snippets starting from the earliest arcs leading up to the present in a sequential fashion, wherein Tim is trying to perfect the mudroom, often with the help of Barbara or Proxy because they do kind of edge him out on computer programming skills. He would want to see how far he can take the clay in terms of width, density, multiple opponents, etc. He speaks with each member of the team about each Clayface, giving a summation of their histories as Tim studied them and how their abilities may be incorporated. He even cites Clayfaces whose powers aren't integrated yet for context and brainstorming. For example, he speaks with Batwing about Basil Carlo.
First of all, he's not a genius. He's an actor. And second, he's not much of an actor.
Later Steph about Preston Payne, Cass about Lady Clayface, and so on. A sequence of interconnected flashback stories, essentially. The issue would conclude with Tim noting how the clay only works inside the mudroom and wonders if there's a way to make it useful outside of it.
I can make the Shadow Clone Jutsu a reality. And Alfred said all that anime was bad for me. Believe it! Now I see what he was talking about.
Fall of the Batmen.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Armstrong strolls into Colonel Samuels' office on the colony airship. Ulysses has left the ship more often lately, which is unusual for him. I've been told I needed to get out more, sir. Simon reminds him that since they're stationed back over Gotham, anyone in town could recognize him from his past crimes, with word spreading to the Bats quickly. While on the lookout for any further League of Shadows activity, he's to take an escort with him and go incognito for future outings. In the Belfry, Luke and Kate discuss the attempted time murder, whether or not she should change her routine or take time off, but she does not like second-guessing her every move. For all they know, future Bat was unhinged and created a fantasy of Kane as so terrible it justified his own actions. Bad enough she's avoiding the dating scene because her last girlfriend turned out to be a covert assassin.
When they say farmersonly.com, they mean farmers only.
Red Robin, meanwhile, is experimenting with the clay mass, making duplicates of people for espionage or applying it as a kind of living armor. Unfortunately, he and Proxy haven't been able to perfect a miniaturized device that would replicate the signal that makes the mudroom possible. He's also feeling a time crunch since he'll be starting at IVU pretty soon.
He's already decided what frat to join, but the school is so nerdy, their form of hazing is to write a dissertation on the later works of Ernest Hemingway.
The following day, Armstrong is at Arkham Asylum, visiting the first victim, claiming to his escort, who will report this to the Colonel, it was merely a fact-finding mission, debriefing a recent new opponent of the Batman. In the Belfry, Steph sees Tim obsessing over different projects at once, and tries to pull him back. Defensive, he says that if he isn't careful, Bats, Cassandra, and maybe more of the team will die. She calmly states that he can't control everything or everyone when an alert brings everyone to the main hall. News reports that the first victim has led a revolt in Arkham with the help of sympathetic guards and the rest of the victims' syndicate. Batman is to meet them alone in the next hour or they start releasing inmates. Part 2 picks up with Bats already coordinating with Gordon, when Proxy informs them that a heated protest for Victims' Day is underway. Pointy Ears looks at Spoiler knowingly, so she takes Black Bat and Red Robin with her to observe the demonstration. Bats will go to the asylum, with Robin staying outside just in case. Batwing and Batwoman will be on patrol, so no crooks take advantage of all the chaos. Batman arrives at Arkham, enters alone, confronting the Syndicate, sans their leader, and about 20 guards in riot gear. Spoiler, Black Bat and Red Robin watch the protest. Boisterous, but not dangerous. Tim is distracted, wondering if he should even bother with IVU anymore, but Steph tells him that Gotham will be fine if he takes a break. He can video chat with Luke and Proxy in his spare time, visit every so often to suit up and punch goons, and if he just wants to talk or needs someone to listen, she's always available.
This time we'd actually see Batman fight the Syndicate. A novel concept, I know, but Firsties isn't with them, and most of the guards are actually inmates in disguise. Gotta keep pointy ears on his toes and all that.
Bats arrives at the room he was told the first Vic was waiting in, and it's empty. The fight was nothing but a distraction for an escape, so he radios his allies, then asks Proxy if she's acquired what they talked about.
Stop laughing! Cape rash is a real thing, and it's painful! Did you find the bomb I asked for or not?
On the colony airship, Armstrong walks into Samuels' office on his cell phone, saying, "Don't take too long with your makeup." "If that's a date, Armstrong, consider it cancelled." After the disturbance at Arkham, the one escapee is the person Ulysses visited. The Prodigy insists it must be a coincidence, which the Colonel counters, "Then explain this!" He reveals the Anarchy costume, found in Armstrong's quarters, and remands him to the brig until further notice. That's when the lights start flickering, and they begin losing non-essential power. At the protest, Red R wonders why it's in Gotham Square, not the GCPD or Mayor's office. He gets an alert of a disturbance at the Belfry, checking the cameras to find the observation windows broken from the inside, just like the viewing window into the mudroom. Then a 5-story tall clay giant with bat ears and a bat emblem embossed on its chest is seen advancing on the protesters.
Yeah, not quite as huge as Basil in the original story, but how they gathered that much clay from him over the years was always a little suspect to me. Even with less clay, a lot of damage can be done.
Part 3 flashes back to Armstrong's visit at Arkham. He's disguised and talking in code to the first victim while his escort watches. His clues lead to an abandoned Radio Hut store where Firsties finds a box that is subsequently opened. Then jump to now, where we see the blood-faced twit with a VR-like headset attached by wires to a pair of gloves and ankle bracelets. The gear allows control over the clay giant, which begins threatening the protesters, and naturally, our young trio do what they can to disperse the crowd and distract the beast. Steph figures this was no coincidence, that Anarchy must be involved somehow, but has to table that angle for now, since some of the demonstrators are attacking the vigilantes, thinking the monster is Batman's doing.
That's crazy. What, you think he approached a suddenly repentant Clayface, trained him to help fight crime, and now he's gone even more bonkers from a deteriorating brain? Who would think that up?
They call for backup, and Pointy Ears, who is already on his way, shows up to drop off Damien to aid the others. Firsties, seeing the giant's POV via the headset, pursues the Batmobile, as the Dark Knight hoped. While he drives, and Proxy manipulates traffic lights to keep citizens away, Bats tells the team that first victim must be behind the attack, probably controlling the giant. Batwing and Batwoman arrive to help, and before long, Kate happens to notice First Vic on a rooftop, motioning like the monster she saw as she swung by, as Bats was leading the giant to the largely deserted and under reconstruction Monster Town. She loses her grapnel launcher in the fracas, her allies are swamped, but gets an idea when disarming a guy with a gun. Before she picks it up, someone yells, "Batwoman, catch!" She's tossed a handgun, grabs it, carefully takes aim at the villain's face, and squeezes the trigger. Part 4 opens with Batman's car getting wrecked, and the giant coming for him, before it turns into lifeless slop. The protesters quieted by the gunfire, Batwoman lowers from a rooftop with Firsties in tow. Some accuse her of murder, only to reveal that the round just broke the headset and was non-lethal, as the gun was thrown to Kate by Red Hood. Firsties awakens as Spoiler, working on info being relayed to her by Proxy, unmasks the villain, with people initially repulsed by a disfigured face. Made cleaner after Steph wipes off heavy makeup with her cape. First victim is a woman with no real scars, and the large video screens in the square play a news clip from several years ago, revealing Bloodface is actually, let's say Karen James or something. What does it really matter?
She was an investment banker at a firm once targeted by the Riddler. While investigating the supercriminal, Batman discovered and revealed she'd been embezzling funds. She fled with most of her ill-gotten gains, changed her identity a few times, but swore revenge for the mild inconvenience of having been exposed as a criminal.
Even while on the lam, she got by just fine, living in decent apartments, still able to afford food and so forth, but she was also a very entitled person, and was angry because she wanted to live in swanky penthouses. But also being very self-unaware, she never blamed herself or her own greed for what happened. She didn't even go as far as to blame the Riddler's antics. No, she blamed the Dark Knight. It took a while to find her identity and piece this all together, because Batman genuinely thought Firsties was a legit victim of an action related to him, a villain attack or family member of someone he failed to save from early in his caped crusading. But no, she's just a boring white-collar criminal that lived a better life than most folks with regular 9-to-5s. You may be asking, why did I make this change in particular?
Because, in case you haven't watched my review of this run on TEC, the first victim wasn't very interesting. A garish design and identity ambiguity didn't make for compelling foil. Without knowing even a little about a character's past, why should we identify with, understand, or feel invested in their motives? Because it's worked with a couple other characters like the Joker for so long?
There wasn't a need for some grandiose dramatic backstory because this character wasn't particularly interesting. Whereas the original essentially betrayed any kind of original goal as far as standing up for the victims of Batman's actions, at least this version I've concocted was always selfish, deceptive, and entitled. Though, speaking of entitled, I guess an alternative secret identity for the first victim could be... But moving on. Karen is, understandably, much madder now with her secret exposed, spoiler joking her face turning as red as her mask, and she starts spewing vitriol at the Capes about how her life was ruined by bats, further implicating herself in front of the crowd and their smartphone cameras they're using to record her. Batman radios for a pickup back to the Belfry, and will contact Gordon about getting some blockades around the excess clay until they can retrieve it. On the colony airship, the technicians discovered that much of the power was diverted to a transmitter, one sending a powerful signal received somewhere in Monster Town. Colonel Samuels is leading Armstrong to his cell, giving him one last chance to explain what's going on. "Settling an old score," Ulysses says, as a lump of clay leaps from his body and encompasses the CO's face. He throws Simon into a cell, waiting until he's unconscious to remove the clay, while expositing that some of his drones had some gunk left on them after killing the fake Red Robin. He experimented with it, analyzing the nanites and discovering the way to control them. Having learned from his time with Lonnie Machin, he constructed some specialized gear to manipulate the clay, for himself and First Vic, so it could be a rampaging monster or be thin enough to pass for part of his own body without anyone noticing. Donning a control headband, Ulysses says he's letting Samuels live out of respect, but for now, the orders are changing. After all, a colonel's command is easily outranked by a general.
Well, yeah, that's why a different general lobbied to have this ship commanded by his friend, Shaquille O'Neal. But schedules conflicted, so here we are.
The trial of Batwoman.
I'm not on trial here. Am I?
The team returns to base, with Batgirl and Nightwing arriving to assist in the aftermath. Babs can help Luke and Tim see what happened with the clay, but for the rest, it's mostly cleanup. Bats takes Kate aside, chiding her for considering killing First Vic. She didn't see any other option. Every second the monster remained active was another chance to kill Batman or anyone in its path. The others get drawn in, even though Bruce tells them to get back to work, but Kane would rather hear what they have to say. Damian, of course, doesn't care because he thinks everyone is beneath him. The others mostly seem to disapprove of her intent to kill, but are at least thankful no one died and that things seem to turn out better than they could have. Bats, however, figures that given Batwoman's lack of remorse, in a similar situation she could go through with it in the future, and that's kind of worrisome to him. Batwing, having made friends with Kate these past several months, and knowing she's a Marine, says she won't likely go down some slippery slope if she kills one psychopath. Red Hood chimes in, saying he kept an eye on Kate specifically because of future Tim's warning, and noticed Bloodface too when he arrived, but threw B-Woman his gun because she had a better shot. He also asks how many times Batman nearly went too far before someone stopped him from ending some criminal.
The truth hurts, even for Batman, and he cannot hurt it back. Though you know he's probably trying to figure out a way to do that anyway.
Todd's point is that what created Bat Drake's future was probably Kate killing someone for whom the protesters felt sympathetic. Coupled with a bat-looking clay giant, it ramped up anti-vigilante sentiment. Sure, investigations in that timeline likely revealed Karen James just the same, but without that big dramatic reveal, it would likely feed conspiracy nuts. So Bats was killed by someone he saved, the Allies did what they could, but Gotham just kept sinking. The idealist Red Robin, figuring he'd deduced the best solutions, ended up driving those closest to him away, while others just abandoned the fight. It's a working theory with sparse data to go on, but it does make the most sense right now. Stopping firsties as soon as possible was the best solution, but lethal means would have had dire consequences. Essentially, Jason says, they should just be glad things worked out the way they did. Meanwhile in Monster Town, as the clay mass begins spiraling into the sky, Armstrong addresses the colony airship, claiming an incapacitated Samuels left him in charge. The crew figure it's a lie and refuse to comply when the clay mass busts in and starts attaching to them. Ulysses then begins changing the ship's course.
Now we go where I want for lunch. Onward to Burger King.
Bats has a grim look on him, silent yet contemplative, but Kate doesn't bother to wait for him to speak. She's fine with being kept in the dark about their civilian identities, since she doesn't really care, but has a can't fire me, I quit attitude since they don't seem to trust her as much as she thought. She jumps out the broken window, with most knowing better than to try stopping her. Soon it's discovered that the clay mass was drawn out via a signal stronger than the mudroom, something that'd need a powerful transmitter with a lot of power to manage. That's when Batwoman returns, surprisingly, but she doesn't say anything, just attacks her former team as the chapter ends.
When I quit my last job, I just gave advance notice. Of course, by then, the guy I wanted to punch in the face had already left, so... But anyway, we've got one more story arc to finish. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.